Welcome to Open Forum from the MTA USA studios in Silver Springs, Maryland. Today we'll be talking about marriage. Why tie the knot? And if you do choose to tie the knot, is the Western style of tying the knot better than the Islamic style? And we have some great panelists here today who will be discussing just those topics with us. Starting from my right, we have Salaam Bhatti. Salaam is a practicing attorney in New York City. Next we have Imam Nouman Rana. Imam Rana is a imam in Zion, Illinois. And we have Qasim Rashid, the author of The Wrong Kind of Muslim and now his new book, Extremist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get started. Imam Rana, why should one get married? Why even tie the knot?
When we study the Holy Quran says that married men and women are protected and safeguarded as if they are in a castle, and safeguarding themselves from the evils of society, the vices of the society, therefore keeping their piety and their righteousness. That's why marriage is a must.
So, Qasim, why do you need this protection? Why do you need to be in this castle with another woman? Why can't you find love in other ways? Why do you have to have that commitment? Can't you just live with her inside the castle?
The beauty of Islamic teachings is that they have a very practical application. God doesn't just say, do it because I told you, but there's a reason behind it. And with marriage, what we find is that it offers the basic building blocks of society. Just as every organization, every company needs a structure to function, the structure for society to function is marriage. The family unit is ultimately how a society develops, advances, and goes to the next level of success.
So Salaam, I get why a man and woman need to be together. I get why you need a family structure, and I get why you need a castle. But why do you need that piece of paper, that affirmation that you are married? I know plenty of people who live together, who for years on end, and they have great relationships without the quote unquote burden of marriage. What do you tell them?
Well, the whole certificate thing is a state thing that just popped up over the last few hundred years.
There's religious ceremonies as well. The nikah, there's
right.
various ceremonies as well. Why do you need those?
With that, it's a public vow of I am taking responsibility of this, and that's the beauty of marriage. It's showing that you will be responsible for someone and for the future, because whether you're thinking Islamically or secularly, especially if you're thinking in the utilitarianism style, if you want society to progress, then the utility, the happiness, the progress of that society.
But I don't care about society. I just care about loving someone, and I don't want to have to be committed for the rest of my life.
Well, if you think of that on an individual level, it's a very selfish thought, and it could lead to the unraveling of society very quickly.
Is it really a selfish thought? I mean, I love the person I'm with. I want to live in the castle that you described, Imam Rana. Why can't I just live together and do the right thing? Why do I need this contract for society's sake?
Right. Well, when people get married, they love that person. They want to dedicate their life for that person. They want to be committed, and that's why there's marriage. People want to be with that person for the rest of their life, and they both take that vow. They both dedicate their lives for each other. And as far as a nikah ceremony is concerned, these are the principles of marriage within Islam. That why there's a nikah ceremony, why there's a wali for the wife, or why are there two witnesses, right? So these are the principles of marriage within Islam that safeguard a husband and a wife before they go into this vow.
Now, there's challenges with Western-style marriages. The average person has over 15 partners in a Western marriage. There's lots of data to prove that there may be challenges in that. Divorce rates, you can cite your statistic. But at the very fundamental piece, isn't there more love in a Western-style marriage than any other style of marriage? When you actually go identify someone, when you actually see them, understand them, and you find love in that person, and even if you have to go through a few people, discovering love, shouldn't that lead to longer, more sustaining, more happy relationships?
I think we need to differentiate between love and attraction. There's a significant difference between the two.
What is the difference?
It is possible to be attracted to many different people. It's very possible for that. But the concept of love, as Islam defines it, goes beyond just mere physical attraction. As human beings, as physical beings, we have physical attractions, whether it's to a person, whether it's to a food we like, whether it's to a kind of music we listen to. When we talk about love, about spending your life with someone whom you connect with on a deep emotional
So what's the
level,
difference between attraction and
love
love?
goes
How do you cross the
beyond the
line?
physical aspect of it and connects on the emotional level, on the mental level, on the spiritual level, and on the physical level.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you, but are you saying that that does not exist in a Western society?
No,
Once they find love,
what I'm
once they
saying
go
is-
from attraction to love?
What I'm saying is in the Western society, the concept of love before marriage focuses significantly on the physical aspect of it. Now, Islam doesn't knock that categorically. Islam says, yes, there should be physical attraction. This is actually a very important hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, that when you look upon your spouse, you should feel that attraction. That should definitely be there. The problem with the Western style of marriage is that that has come to dominate everything we see in marriage. That's a primary thing that people look at. And in doing so, they not only discard, but they ignore their future prospects by finding somebody that they emotionally connect with, that they spiritually connect with, that they mentally connect with.
Isn't that a little cynical, though?
That's what I want to mention, that how Qasim mentioned the words of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know, he didn't leave out the attraction or the family or the wealth, right? He mentioned all those, but he mentioned that the spirituality of the woman also counts, and that should be the.
But talk to me about the
right.
Western style marriage before you go into the Islamic style.
Right. So-
In the Western style marriage, he's saying that the premise is it's basically a heavy duty level of attraction and very little love. I would disagree with that.
See,
Would you agree with him?
No, it's possible that it is all attraction. Maybe it's only in the beginning, but later on they find love with each other. That's possible. But by the time you get there, how many partners have you gone through, right? This becomes a habit. Since they do not tie any knot, they have one, and then second, and third, and this keeps on going. And this and we can say that this is the reason why the divorce rate is so high.
I think a point that I need to add to that is that the concept of going into a relationship in the West isn't necessarily I'm looking for a marriage partner. That's not the primary intent,
that may
right?
be true for
But I
some
think-
younger folks, but we know I think that's a gross generalization, don't you think?
No, but that's my point, that it begins in the youth, right? When you go into a relationship in your youth, nowadays they have these proms for children as young as 11, 12 years old. Mind-boggling to me. My son will be there in a few years. This is an insane concept to me, that we are almost pushing our children to be involved in these kind of intimate relationships at a time when they're not old enough to even drive a car yet. So when you go into this as a child with the mentality that I'm not looking for a life partner, I'm looking for that primary physical connection, that expounds and proceeds into adulthood. And when people get to adulthood and when they begin to realize that life is more than just physical attraction, it becomes all the more difficult to detach yourself from that and commit yourself to wanting to find someone who you connect with mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically. That's why marriage becomes so much more difficult in the older age.
Do you, first of all, do you agree? Tell me your interpretation of Western marriages. Is there more love in them? Is there more, or is it purely a physical attraction thing?
I think when it comes to the comparison between the two, a child and a father summed it up very nicely. A child asks his father, "Is it true, father, that in some cultures men don't know their men don't know their wives until they marry them?" The father says, "Son, that's true in every culture." And that's the truth. You know, you don't know who you're going to be with, who you're going to be spending your life with until you're actually in that responsible zone. So whether it's the arranged marriage Islamic concept or the Western style, you're both heading into the same territory, but you're coming from very different backgrounds.
So tell me about the Western style marriage. I think what Qasim's trying to get to is it's more than just you get married. It starts much earlier. It starts when you're 11 years old,
right.
And how you interact with the opposite gender that leads up to this. And is that a flawed argument in the Western marriage because of the lead up? There's more cynicism, and when you do find love, is it less love?
I think so. I would say yes, because when you start that early, especially, or the statistics say that people have about 15 to 20 on average life partners throughout their life. So if you have so many partners, whoever you end up marrying, you're going to end up putting all those past partners, you're going to compare them with her or him. So,
so
that's
Imam,
not fair. So that's not fair.
That's not fair.
That's not
So
fair.
Imam Rana, having so many partners, having so much experience, what is the downside of that?
The downside is once you have gone through all these partners, and even if you end up getting married, so you're used to this mentality that you're going out with someone, you're with someone, and without tying any knot, you can just leave. There's no commitment. There's nothing, and and I think that hangs on. Even after you get married, there's no that level of commitment or compromise, and that's why we see that there are so many divorces.
Now, Qasim, you have two young boys, and they're going to be coming of age and going to school and doing all these things. And I assume you want them to follow the Islamic system of marriage. Tell me a little bit about the Islamic system.
The Islamic system of marriage is very simple. It's one that protects both boys and girls. It teaches boys to respect women and treat them as equal human beings, treat them with the utmost respect. It teaches women to also respect boys and respect themselves, and to recognize that they are the most important part of society, to not allow boys to take advantage of them. When boys are raised with the attitude that they must respect women and treat them as equal human beings, and women are raised with the attitude that they are the most important part of society, which they are, it creates an environment where both have a strong
identity. But there's no
identity.
women on this panel, so that's the downside to check that.
Yeah, and no, I mean that's part of this panel directly, but I'm speaking from the Islamic standpoint as the Prophet Muhammad taught, as his wives demonstrated. Let's not forget, his wife Khadija was the president and CEO of her own thriving trade organization. She was one of the most wealthy and powerful women in Mecca at the time. So the idea is that both boys and girls are raised with this concept of identity, who I am, what I stand for. And in doing so, when they get to the point of marriage, they take their years of self-confidence and self-identity and go into the relationship with the intention that I'm looking for a life partner. Not just someone to spend a weekend with, not just someone to have a fling with, but someone who is dedicated, just like I am, to that family unit in the eyes of God and creating that social fabric of society to move society forward.
So Imam Rana, there's lots of misconceptions, or perhaps they're not misconceptions, of how the nuts and bolts of an Islamic marriage works. There's misconceptions where women are given by their parents to the person who gives the male who gives the largest dowry, or they're given, the parents actually make the decisions when the children are 6 months old, not even knowing, and they say, oh, the parents said do this. Tell me, what is culture, and tell me, what is the Islamic marriage?
Well, that is culture, what you mentioned. We might find this in different cultures, how some girls are married at a very young age, maybe even without their permission. But the Islamic way is that parents can assist because of their experience, because of their age, because they have been married for a long time.
And the parent probably knows the child best.
Right. And this has to be with the permission of both the bride and the bridegroom.
So who makes the final decision in a marriage, in an Islamic marriage?
The bride and the bridegroom.
So
they
it's
make
not
the
the
final.
parents.
No,
And that's
they're
based on
only there
religion?
for a guide that would guide their children using their experience and their age.
So tell me how this works in the Western society, these Islamic marriages. Now there aren't very many Muslims. There aren't many individuals to choose from. Is there attraction in an Islamic marriage, or is this a mechanical thing? You're doing it because of your piety and because of what Qasim explained, or is there any attraction at all? Whereas we describe the Western style as almost off the charts in terms of starting with attraction. Is there any attraction in Islamic marriage?
For sure. There's I believe there's 4 criterion for Islamic marriage. One being attraction, another one being what their family is like, what their religious life is like, what their social class is like, because these are all very important factors in the future, and they really help dictate who's going to have a successful marriage. So
what are the 4 criteria?
It was
attraction, family, wealth, and spirituality.
Spirituality. Okay.
I was 4 for 4.
So what is the so how does attraction work?
So attraction is very simple. You get to under
But
supervised.
you don't interact very closely.
Right. So that's that. So with the Islamic approach, maybe you've never seen this girl. And so your parents or your guardian will arrange something with her parents or her guardian, and you arrange a meeting. It's a supervised meeting, it's chaperoned, and you get to see her, and she gets to see you. You guys get to interact, have a conversation.
But how do you get to know a person in such a, with a spotlight on you, there's someone watching, do you actually, other than exchanging pleasantries, can it actually go beyond that to understand who you're marrying?
You know, I think it's important to understand that this Islamic concept is not alien to the West. This is the philosophy that even 20th century America embraced and endorsed.
But come back to my question for a second.
So my point is that this anomaly of the dating scene in the West that we see today is the exception. The rule throughout human history has been supervised interaction and opportunity to get to know the other person in a family environment.
Most people, as long as they, for the past few generations, have not seen that. Perhaps that was true before that. So in this day and age, it's hard to understand. So my question again is really around, how do you, in this highly supervised manner, how do you get to know the person to make a level-headed, good decision on who that person is, and if they meet the 4 qualities that you're testing for?
Well, again, remember, there's not a restriction. It's not that you meet once for 10 minutes and then you're done. If you want to meet once for 10 minutes or 100 times for 100 hours, the criteria that Islam establishes is that there should be a supervised meeting, in the sense that it should be in the company of other people. That doesn't mean that in the room with you. You have the time to get to know the person, and you have no obligation. In fact, Islam says do not make a decision until you feel wholly comfortable. And the reality is, the other day a friend of mine called me, a Christian friend of mine, and said, hey, I'm getting married. I said, great, how'd you meet her? He said, I met her through Match.com. So that concept of them being arranged, he put up his profile, she put up her profile, they matched them together. It was literally an arranged meeting.
There isn't much of a difference now, you're saying, between Western marriage and Islamic marriage.
That's my point.
So Imam, let me ask you, back to my simple question of, how does one get comfortable in such a highly supervised and where the spotlight is on these two couple? How do they really get to know each other, whether it's once or 20 times? Match.com and others, at least you have some private interaction, so you're committing to a lifetime with this person. See,
the question is, where are you going to draw the line, right? You can have 1 or 2 meetings, like Qasim mentioned, as many as they need, as they feel that there's need to get to know each other. But at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is they're trying to see if they're compatible with each other. For example, they can discuss maybe their hobbies, their profession, what they like to do, right? Because that's what makes a person, right? And I think that should be sufficient for a person to decide whether he is willing to dedicate himself, to commit himself to this
Do you think someone can get to know someone beyond the physical attraction piece and truly understand a person? Whereas in a Western marriage, through Match.com, you take all these surveys, and or through typical Western marriages, you have these unsupervised interactions where you go deep, and the argument is they even perhaps live together before, so they really get to know the person before they get married. In absence of that, in an Islamic marriage, how does the process allow you to get to know someone, or is the premise that you don't need to know someone that well?
See, the bottom line is that, of course, you can only know the person to a certain extent. It's different than if you're going out with someone for a couple of years and then you decide to commit yourself to the marriage. But here we have a couple. A man and a woman who are willing to get married, and I think it would be enough for them to just discuss some of the basics about their life, and then continue that with knowing each other and what are their hobbies, and then take it from there. And I think that should be sufficient for them to start a relationship.
So, Salaam, tell me your experiences. You're the youngest one here. You were recently married. You have lots of friends that you shared earlier that you've gone to their weddings and they've met in the Western way. Tell me the difference. I mean, tell me the practical application of this.
Well, the practical application of Western marriages?
Versus the way you got married and in an Islamic marriage. I mean, does what they're saying hold true?
Yeah, more or less. Of course, it's always specific to each individual, to each couple, but we can look at things on a statistical level. We can look at people as numbers. And so when it was coming time for me to get married, I did my research. Marriage is a big deal. So I went to my brother, who had been married for a year at that point, and I said, hey, can you give me some advice? And he said, the first year is the hardest. I said, okay, so I took that away. Then I met somebody who had been married for 5 years, and I asked him, hey, can you give me some advice? He said, the first 5 years are the hardest. And then I was like, okay, that's good to know. So I met somebody with more experience. He'd been married for 30 years. I asked him for some advice. He says the first 30 years are the hardest. So that's what we're coming up against when it comes to marriage. A lot of people see these happy-go-lucky marriages on TV, on screen, and in life, you know, but they don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Sure.
You know, the story doesn't end at happily ever after. That's when
Sure.
it begins, right?
Sure.
So it's a lot of communication. Communication is key in a marriage, in a successful marriage. And even if that communication is yelling at each other, you have to get your feelings out. You have to get everything on the table. The best advice I got for marriage was it's very frustrating. And so when I went in knowing that,
Right.
everything was great.
You understand?
Yeah, I want to make a couple of points, but the first thing is, right, marriage can be frightening. I forget who said it, but 50% of marriages end up lasting forever. And that can be frightening if you think about it, if you don't know who you're getting involved with. But there's two issues I want to address here. One is that for a marriage to be truly successful on a societal level, I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to ingrain that identity in children growing up.
That's right.
You can't just magically expect someone to have a paradigm shift in their worldview once they've been raised in an environment where boys are taught it's okay to be with as many different girls as possible, and women are told it's natural that guys will want you in that way, so don't fight it, which is what we're having in the society right now, which is why
But that's true for Western and Islamic. Right? That should be a value statement.
No, I agree, but my point is that when you have a Western society where, and this is a fact, we live in a society where women in the Western culture are not treated as equals. 1,000 women are killed every year in America by their husbands or boyfriends. 1 in 5 women will be assaulted in her lifetime at some point. And these
Are you saying that doesn't happen in Islamic marriages?
No. I'm saying that happens in the Islamic marriage that the Prophet Muhammad established. You have a far lesser degree of it. You're not going to eliminate it entirely because humans are prone to error. So the first point I want to make is we need to establish the identity up front in boys that women are not objects, they are equal human beings, and they must be treated with the utmost respect. Regardless of what a woman does, a boy must never feel that it is his right to impose himself on a woman.
Got it.
The second point I have to make very clear is that when finding a woman to marry, or when finding a guy to marry, this concept of physical interaction, of hedonistic pleasure, has taken such a forefront that people will say, I can't marry the person unless I know how I physically interact in a hedonistic manner.
What does hedonistic mean?
Sexual pleasure.
Okay.
And I think this is a nonsense argument. Because if you truly love somebody for who they are, for what they offer as an intellectual, as a spiritual person, as an emotional person, that is secondary, is tertiary. In fact, I think it's the least important thing. It is still an important thing. But the idea that that has to happen before I can decide whether I want to spend my life with somebody.
After marriage. So let's come back to the topic. Our topic is describe to me the Islamic marriages, and we've covered it from very many angles, and may take. So here's what I understand, and then correct me if I'm wrong. In an Islamic marriage, the ultimate decision is with the bride and the groom. The parents are the guides for these individuals because they probably know those two individuals best, other than themselves, because they've lived with them for all their lives. They know their tendencies, they know what makes them tick, and perhaps they can filter out the outliers that they may advance towards in a state of rage or in a state of passion, which help them avoid that. And the third thing being, in that matchmaking process, there's lots of guidance to help these individuals make good decisions, because there's bad matches as well. To avoid bad matches, how does the community help? In an Islamic system? I mean, things go wrong in all marriages. I think you said it very well. But how do we, as a community, guide individuals? I think Qasim is on to something. How do we guide a community? Not just if they're Muslim or non-Muslim, Christian or of no faith at all. How do we guide individuals towards making decisions that allow them to have a sustaining and marriage partner for life? And I think you raised a great point, starting early in terms of making sure that you start early in preparing someone for that. But what is the guidance for a parent to, you have two young children, a boy and a girl. You have 2 young children as well, and you will soon have children.
God willing.
God willing. Now, what is the guidance for parents in preparing children for an ultimate goal of having one life partner for life? Imam, Rana, we'll start with you.
Yes. I think for parents, the best way they can inculcate or teach their children these habits is by doing it themselves. Now, during the Islamic ceremony, which is called nikah, the verses that are recited during that Islamic ceremony, the word of fear of God, fear of displeasure of God has been used more than 5 times. Now, why it has been used is that this is very essential. This is the essence of marriage, that you keep this in mind. You fulfill your obligations keeping this in mind. And this is, I think this is the main principle of marriage within Islam.
And then do Islamic marriages give flowers to each other? Is there actual love post-marriage?
Of course, there's flowers, candies. You can even write poems if you want.
Wow. What are you going to say?
You know, it says more than 5 times in the Quranic verse about fear of displeasure of God. But some of us have learned that it's also the fear of the displeasure of our wives. So we gotta be careful there too, because if you miss an event, you'll have to get more flowers and more candy.
Right.
So, but tell me more. Tell me how do you prepare children for marriage, whether they're Muslim or not?
Right. So Qasim had brought up earlier that we have kids as young as 11 getting ready for proms because their parents are inculcating in them a belief about, hey, let's get you into the dating game early. Instead of doing that, do the inverse. Tell the kids, start praying for your spouse now. You know, and not only when you're telling them.
Got it. Start praying for your spouse.
And that comes together with, you know, study hard, get good grades, get into good school. You know, you're already inculcating that into your kids from when they're like 6, 7. You're gonna be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, whatever. But also say, hey, pray for your spouse too. Pray for your grades, pray for your spouse, pray for your kids from your teenage years too.
Qasim, do you have any quick advice? We got 30 seconds.
Leadership matters. And you know, as Muslims, we are Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, and we are guided by His Holiness the Khalifa of Islam. And his advice on marriage, his writings, his lectures are paramount. So I encourage all parents to follow the example of our Imam, because leadership matters, and follow the leader's example.
Okay, so I concede this Islamic marriage system does seem and does provide proof, and the 3 of you did a wonderful job. Now, one of the challenges we have with explaining Islamic marriages, because of the misconceptions of them, how do you explain this to your friends in America if you're going through an Islamic marriage process versus a traditional dating game growing up in America? How do you explain an Islamic marriage to a friend that you've chosen this route? We'll start with you, Salaam.
I used to explain to my friends, I don't have to do anything. My mom's going to do everything for me. And they were like, that sounds amazing, because they realized how important that is. In the beginning, in elementary school, junior high, high school, people were like, oh, that doesn't give you much leeway, you know, what are you going to do? But in college and in the professional world, people are like, you know, because you don't get married in high school, right? You get married after college, after in the professional world. They were like, that's so much better.
So the help is important.
So much better.
And you explained that to them. Okay, let's keep going.
That's what I wanted to mention, that all you have to say is that the decision is still mine. My parents just helped me out. That's it. That's the only difference.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I think living the example yourself and demonstrating how productive it actually is. I've worked in environments where I was managing people who were envious of my wife, that she doesn't have to work. She can if she wants to, but she doesn't have to. And I think that it stems from that system of this being a family decision, where you find somebody who will fit with you more than just your physical needs, but your emotional, financial, mental and spiritual needs as well.
And I'm sure you have beautiful wives and families, and then this process really works for lots of individuals. Is the divorce rate truly lower in Islamic marriages?
I believe so.
And then why is that?
Because if
you would think it wouldn't be, because the process seems so counterintuitive.
Right. I believe it is low because of that the level of commitment and keeping God in mind, that you love this person because for the sake of God, right? I think that would leave a marriage, a very stable marriage.
I want to point out one thing that I think we've ignored, and that is, I don't want to paint all Western marriages as monolithic and all Islamic marriages as monolithic. There's a ton of diversity amongst the two as well. And I think that type of Islamic marriage we're talking about is the one established by Prophet Muhammad.
What does monolithic mean, first of all?
Meaning that there's diversity. There are different types of Western marriages, and even among Muslims, there's diversity among Muslims, and there's different types of marriages within Islam.
Okay.
So when we talk about Islamic marriages, and my colleagues can disagree if they do, but I'm looking at the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. That's a kind of Islamic marriage. And by that model, I think there's no doubt that divorce rate is lower. But let's not look at the negative. Let's look at the positive. I think the marital happiness rate is also higher. You have
That
longer
is great.
marriages, and it's an important element to look at too.
Thank you. This has been a discussion on marriage. We discussed why marriage, and our great panel discussed why actually entering into the contract of marriage is better than not entering into a contract and just living with someone. Then we talked about the idea of a Western marriage and the challenges with the attraction, the physical attraction, starting at a young age of going to the prom at the age of 11 and going forward. And then we moved on to Islamic marriages, realizing that Islamic marriage, if done properly, has lots of value in having the assistance of your parents, in having the prayers, and in fearing God when you get married, and starting at a young age and building up to that has lots of value in getting married. Hopefully this has been helpful in those of you who are looking to get married, and those of you who you're enjoying your marriage in that process. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining Open Forum, a program of MTA USA from our offices in Silver Spring, Maryland.